Namaste. Welcome to another episode of JK Study Center UK Conversations, where we engage with authors, activists, politicians, subject matter experts, and various stakeholders to provide a comprehensive understanding of Jammu and Kashmir. Today, our conversation focuses on Maharaja Gulab Singh, the founder of Jammu and Kashmir. This stalwart leader was formally coronated as the ruler of Jammu by Maharaja Ranjit Singh Ji on the banks of River Chenab on 17th of June 1822. This year marks the 202nd anniversary of his coronation. On this significant day, let us delve into the pages of history and shed on light on Maharaja Gulab Singh's life, his legacy, his contributions to the polities, society, and economy of Jammu and Kashmir. To help us with this, we are joined today by Shri Rohit Pathania ji, an author, analyst who has extensively studied Jammu and Kashmir and Dogra history. With his varied interests in politics, history, and environment, Rohit ji will definitely bring a wealth of knowledge to us today with his discussion. So let's welcome Rohit ji. Namaste, Rohit ji. A very warm welcome to you.
Namaste, Manjuji, and thank you for inviting me. It is a great pleasure that I am getting an opportunity to, discuss a topic that's somewhat close to my heart as well, Maharaja Gulab Singh, and the fact that JK Study Center has chosen to time it with the coronation of Maharaja Gulab Singh, the anniversary that is coming up, that is very soon. So, thank you for that.
Thank you, Rohitji. So let's start with a very basic question and understand. Rohitji, if you could just tell us who was Maharaja Gulab Singh Ji and how is he significant to the history of Jammu and Kashmir?
So when we ask who Maharaja Gulab Singh was, I think we have to come back with a very basic statement first. And that is when you look at the 1947 map of Jammu and Kashmir, which had areas as diverse as Gilgit-Baltistan and Jammu together, which had the Kashmir Valley as part of it, which had the vast expanse of Ladakh as a part of it, and which shared borders with Tibet, which shared borders with today's China, which shared borders with Afghanistan. And also, by the way, it had the, governorship, or you could say the overlordship of an area called Chitral in today's Pakistan. So when you examine all of that and you think of who was the man behind it, there's only one answer, and that answer is Maharaja Gulab Singh. He was the man who enabled the creation of a state that was literally 2 times the size of the United Kingdom, and in circumstances that were probably adverse to him, not just say in Lahore, but even in the higher reaches in terms of the geography that the area offers, the vastness, the barrenness in many parts, and yet identifying its strategic importance and coupling it with the ambition of having a large kingdom to his name. A man who started off with literally a horse, you know, goes on to become the ruler of a state unlike any other that is created in the 19th century. Now, many people tend to compare Gulab Singh and say, or Zorawar Singh, who's general, but I would focus more on Gulab Singh here, as somebody who was the Napoleon of the East. But I would rather say that those who have actually understood Gulab Singh or have studied him would say that calling him Napoleon is actually an insult to the scale and magnitude of the achievement that Maharaja Gulab Singh had. Now, if I talk about, a description that somebody like Alexander Gardner, who used to be part of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's Darbar and later goes on to be a part of the Darbar of Gulab Singh after he has been expelled from Lahore in the event of the death of Ranjit Singh and the anarchy that prevails in Lahore. So here is a statement that comes from his own memoirs, and I would like to read it out for the audiences, if you may allow me to. And I quote, "With all this, he must be accounted the very best of soldiers, and for an Asiatic and an uneducated man, he is an able, active, bold, and energetic, yet wise and prudent commander. He is anything but strong-headed and hot-blooded, prudently making slow, resolute, and judicious movements, thinking more of his resources, reserves, etc., than his want of Orientals." So when you see somebody, talking about it and identifying both the political and the military talent of a man being present together in a fusion or a mixture that is perhaps an ideal mixture. And that too in an era when we see a kind of decline taking place across the rest of India. You realize that here is a man who definitely should be called, as K.M. Panikkar had once said, the greatest Indian of the 19th century. So, given that context, I would say that in sum, Maharaja Gulab Singh was an able administrator, a military genius, a man who had a vision, and somebody who dared to dream in an era when it was probably impossible and in circumstances that one would have not imagined.
Brilliant. Actually, that actually comes out to tell us that about Gulab Singh Ji's this early understanding that he was a brilliant military from the very beginning. He had those an astute warrior. So, could you please elaborate a bit on Gulab Singh's descent, his ancestry, and can you explain us how he went on becoming the part of the Sikh Empire later on?
That's a very good question to ask. A lot of people tend to assume in recent times that the Dogra dynasty came out of nowhere. And this is where I want to highlight the ancestry of the Dogra Empire, particularly because, contrary to perception and expectation, the Dogra Empire was actually in continuation as a branch of the previous dynasties that were ruling Jammu, and consequently makes them one of the oldest continuing dynasties, in fact, in North India and its history. Only perhaps comparable to something like a Chamba or, something like the Vodiyars that have been there in Mysore, or perhaps even older than them. So, the last great ruler of Jammu prior to Gulab Singh was a man named Maharaja Ranjit Singh Devji. And the Dev dynasty was at its peak under him. In fact, his rule was called the Golden Age of Jammu by historians, eminent ones like Dr. Sukhdev Singh Charak has said that. So, however, his death, however, leads to a decline. But the various factions of the family, the Dev family, one of them has a man called Mia Zorawar Singh, who is the brother of Brajraj Dev, and the son of Maharaja Ranjit Singh Dev. And it is through him that we have the father of Gulab Singh and his brothers, Mia Kushal Singh Ji, who comes in, and subsequently the three brothers are born at a place called Samailpur in Samba, because they were made the Jagirdars of that small Pargana in the state of Jammu. So it is essentially a continuation of the very same Dev dynasty. Interestingly, when the coronation of Gulab Singh Ji happens as the king of Jammu, the contemporary Maharaja Jeet Singh Ji issues a farman from his side and renunciates his own claim to the throne altogether at that time. And that is also, something that isn't discussed enough to show that this was not a violent, but a rather peaceful transfer of power taking place within the family and not necessarily outside. And that is also what that Sanad basically reflects upon. So that is basically where the ancestry comes from. Now, here's what the interesting thing happens with respect to the introduction or the induction of Mia Gulab Singh Ji, as he was that time, into the Darbar of Lahore. Now, the story goes back to 1809, 1810. There's a slight confusion of a few months between when this happened. Jammu had already started being governed by Punjab in a way, that is the Lahore Darbar of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Mia Hukam Singh Chimney actually has his eyes set on, making the Pargana a proper administrative unit of his own Jagir. And he chooses to attack Jammu. Now, the existing ruler, the ruler of that time, Mia Jeet Singh Dev, he is an incompetent person, but he thinks he's smarter than others. And without consulting the uncle, who's also uncle of Gulab Singh, who's also the Wazir in Jammu, Mia Mota Singh, he tries to, bribe out Mia Hukam Singh Chimney. Sardar Hukam Singh Chimney. Now Sardar Hukum Singh Chimney, even though he takes all the gifts, still goes ahead and presses on with the campaign of Jammu and even reaches the doorstep of Jammu. But it is in that moment that Gulab Singh actually shines through, despite being a very young novice of like 13 or 14 years, as a warrior, and really pushes back the entire Khalsa army off the gate of Jammu. And this is an incident that took place at the Gummad gate of Jammu, very little of which today sadly remains. I mean, this is the state of heritage, sadly, and its preservation in Jammu. But having said that, that incident of single-handedly, pushing back is news that spreads like wildfire across Jammu and Punjab. And even Maharaja Ranjit Singh personally calls upon Mia Mota, who visits later the Darbar of Lahore, on who this boy is who has managed to achieve such an amazing military feat at such a young age. And that is when he manages to get inducted as a soldier first in the Lahore Darbar. Now, interestingly, Mia Zorawar Singh, the grandfather of Gulab Singh ji, who was basically in charge of raising his grandsons, had perchance taunted his own grandson ki you do not have the value of anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what happened, and this is the story that comes from the Gulabnama, which is the memoir that was written for Maharaja Gulab Singh and published a few years after his death. That Gulab Singh ji had taken a horse from Zorawar Singh and basically, had a field day running around with the horse, and he, exercised the horse so much that the horse fatigued. And this was done out of sheer joy. But that irritated the grandfather, and he taunted, "What do you have of your own that you are basically, abusing this kind of authority?" And that really pinched Gulab Singh ji. And that is why I said all he had when he joined the Darbar of Lahore was one horse with him. And that was pretty much it. Now, here's the interesting thing that happens. We see that there are two other brothers who get equally, mentioned in the history of Punjab. Mia Dhyan Singh and Mia Suchet Singh. Yeah. And Mia Dhyan Singh is as part of the Darbar, and Mia Suchet Singh is also part of the cavalry of Ranjit Singh's army. There are these two people in the Lahore Darbar who are associated with Prince Khadak Singh, Satru and Tredu, who basically murder the uncle Mia Mota Singh by deceit. When he was basically visiting the Zanan Khana in Lahore in his own quarters. And the brothers vow, revenge in the true, true warrior spirit of their times, that we will not rest until the two are killed. And in 1809, they actually get the opportunity also and manage to kill Satru by, in a duel by counter, basically by shooting him dead on the street of Lahore. And the two brothers coincidentally also surrendered to Maharaja Ranjit Singh simultaneously in different capacities, of course. Dhyan Singh and Suchet Singh are the two brothers that I'm referring to here. But instead of getting punished, Maharaja Ranjit Singh actually pardons them. He gives Dhyan Singh an important position in the Darbar and gives a Jagir and 50 horsemen, cavalrymen to Mia Gulab Singh for his protection, as he says. Otherwise, he would be killed by the men of Prince Khadak Singh. And that is when the steep ascent of Maharaja Gulab Singh, Dhyan Singh, and Suchet Singh starts happening. This is the pivotal moment, so to speak, in history, where the three brothers start to mark themselves as warriors and administrators on whom the entire Lahore Darbar depends in a manner that cannot be estimated today, even today.
Brilliant. It is a shame that not much of the traces of history are left or seen in Jammu at the moment. But this leads us to the next question, which is how did Gulab Singh rise through the ranks to become the Raja of Jammu?
And that's a fantastic question. And it is a very sad story in today's times that we do not even, recall the military genius of Gulab Singh. Gulab Singh was part of many and important campaigns where even Maharaja Ranjit Singh was personally, involved. Now, there was this very interesting campaign that Maharaja Ranjit Singh had initiated on, taking on the Afghan forces by literally raiding their territory while being present in Dera Ghazi Khan, Peshawar, that belt. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh undertook that campaign with the maxim being approached that offense is the best form of defense. There was some harassment going on by the Yusufzai tribes and the Barkazai tribes in that belt. And so he decides to take them head on. And in campaign like this, Mia Gulab Singh distinguishes himself with not just his bravery, but his tactical genius also. You know, one very interesting incident that happens is that the Atak River, and Atak is something that, literally defines in a way that, mark of the Indian territory in the Punjab, Afghanistan border. And Atak is basically the river that is the Sindhu River. So here is the Sindhu River in all its might flowing through, and all the soldiers, besides Maharaja Ranjit Singh, just wondering what will happen because there is a whirlpool formation in the Atak. It's a very wild stream. While some barraging and damming has happened in recent time, it used to be a wild stream which flew without, with a gush like any other, and there would be sudden surges, especially in the summers. But Mia Gulab Singh, not even thinking twice, just jumps into the waters of the Atak right next to the whirlpool to show that, okay, we can cross the river. So that is a mark, that is a kind of bravery that he distinguishes himself with. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh is so impressed by it that he actually says, come back, I cannot lose a soldier like you. And in fact, starts taunting his other soldiers that this is the kind of bravery that you have, that you cannot even sacrifice your lives for the king. Right. Of course, they later managed to find a spot where they can cross the river safely. And Maharaja Ranjit Singh prays to the river to let them cross and manages to do that. And the campaign is rather successful. And in fact, there was a point in the military conquest that is taking place where Maharaja Gulab Singh actually becomes pivotal in turning the tables when especially the Nonihal Singh forces, which are also part of the campaign, get surrounded on all sides by the Yusufzai and Barkasai tribes, because the army of Lahore was not necessarily in the same numbers as the Barkasai and Yusufzai, but Gulab Singh and his Sawars basically create such such havoc on the Afghan forces that they're actually forced to flee and allow Nonihal Singh to pass through safely. And this is at an elevated point. So they're all, just imagine, here is an elevated point where the forces are trapped of Nonihal Singh, and on below they're surrounded by from all sides by the forces of the Afghans, and breaching through is Gulab Singh and his Sawars through with their barrage of muskets and slashing of swords. This is nothing less than the kind of stories that you hear about the audacity of Western campaigns that are popularized through song, dance, and movies these days. Here is one man who actually did it in India, and we sadly know so little about him. Similarly, the conquest, for instance, of Kishtwar, and a territory as difficult as Kishtwar because of its altitude and geography was, attached to the Lahore Darbar with such ease by Gulab Singh that it became, people started wondering, is this man even normal? For that matter, when you look at the manner in which law and order is basically reinstated in the Pargana of Jammu by Mia Gulab Singh, and this is where the folk hero of Jammu, Mia Dido, also comes in. A man who had fought along with Mia Gulab Singh in the Battle of Jammu in 1809, 1810, but chooses to be a rebel instead of siding with the Lahore Darbar, and continues harassing the administrative officials, leading to absolute chaos and anarchy in Jammu. The sheer tactical strategy that was adopted by Mia Gulab Singh. And let me, bring it up, if you permit me.
Yeah.
Because it is a fascinating story in how you outwit your enemy. Now, despite Ranjit Singh sending soldiers galore and, commanders galore, Mia Dido is escaping everybody's clutch. And it's becoming an embarrassing feature for the Lahore Darbar on a regular basis. But Gulab Singh actually tells a very impressive, I think, when it comes to crushing rebels and rebellions to Ranjit Singh, which compels Ranjit Singh to send him to crush this rebellion. And he says that you do not need an army to kill a fly. Something as simple as that really gets the attention and fancy of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. He sends him off, and Gulab Singh Ji does one very interesting thing. He actually walks around with his own soldiers pretending to be Mia Dido to identify who's supporting Mia Dido and crushing that element off altogether and punishing the element to the extent that nobody wants to support Mia Dido there. And that is how the rebellion was essentially tamed in Jammu. So a strategy of military bravery, but also a man who can outwit, a guerrilla warrior simultaneously. That tells you something. This is a man who can think of all scenarios at all times. So these are the kind of reasons because of which they kept him, and even the bravery of Dhyan Singh and Suchet Singh gets rewarded regularly. Dhyan Singh also turns up as a very good, able administrator within Lahore. In fact, he is responsible for cutting down on the corruption in the Lahore Darbar, the pilfering of money, because of which he himself is, promoted to the level of Wazir, the Prime Minister of Ranjit Singh. While Gulab Singh Ji also, because he is able to set right corruption within the Jagirs that he gets, it comes to the point that he's even, awarded the salt mines. And just imagine, in the 19th century, salt was a very valuable commodity. Please keep that in mind when you hear about this statement. To be given the salt mines to rectify the malpractices taking place. And these salt mines, by the way, were in in Pind Dadang Khan in the Northwest Frontier province. So when you are being entrusted with the one of the most valuable resources of the empire, and setting that administration right, Gardner's writings and Cunningham's writings actually highlight how much revenue for the Lahore Darbar the Dogra brothers were generating for the kingdom of Punjab, and that outweighed, cumulatively, that was like the three brothers had more revenue being generated for the state than all the other administrators, essentially, within the state. And if you add the salt mine revenue to that, I mean, just imagine, this is the power and influence that the brothers wielded and was being put to able use within the Lahore Darbar, I must add. So these are the kind of reasons that led to the meteoric rise, even though there were all these kind of nasty rumors that one or British traveler of the time, for instance, George Michael Smith, even suggested had licentious relationships, for instance, between Dhyan Singh and Ranjit Singh. But there's nobody else who's actually even talking about that, which tells you that probably that was just a fancy rumor somebody had spread. Sadly, there are these kind of rumors that a certain section of supposed academics are talking about even today when it comes to the kind of influence the Dogra brothers had. But history and facts don't back that up today at all. So in some, I would say that their tactic, it was not just Gulab Singh, but the brothers Dhyan and Suchet Singh also, whose military and administrative abilities really got the attention of Maharaja Ranjit Singh and led to the kind of rise that the trio saw within the administrative hierarchy of Lahore Darbar, even to the extent of being awarded the titles of Raja, which was probably unheard of ever.
Certainly, Rohitji, it's a shame that our history doesn't talk much about these men of wits and valor. However, let's move on to the next question, which is about an interesting story about when Maharaja Ranjit Singh Ji marked Gulab Singh with the Tilak, which was downwards. So what did it signify? And can you describe the whole event?
1822, 1821, basically the year when that is Gulab Singh Ji, is being coronated. Now you have to understand the circumstances in which this happens. Now many people say that this was, and this is where, the facts also start disappearing from the narrative that has been set over the years. Now here is a man who has literally restored order, or, brought about strong sense of order and discipline within the empire. And he's being asked to take over the Pargana of Jammu, as part of the already many Parganas that he has. But Mia Gulab Singh Ji puts in a statement to Maharaja Ranjit Singh Ji that explains where the problem will lie from. And he actually says that my own people, that is the people of Jammu, will are rebellious in nature and will not heed to my request for revenue and taxes unless you give me the kind of authority that they will be forced to recognize. And that is when the question arises from Ranjit Singh's side. So what is that authority that you are asking of? And he said, if you give me the throne of Jammu, I will be able to, fulfill the kind of demands that you have. And mind you, Jammu under Raja Gulab Singh was the richest province, so to speak, of the entire Punjab state. So it is in this, fulfilling this request of Gulab Singh that in Akhnur, on the banks of the Chenab, we see this monumental event on outside the Akhnur fort and under a geopota tree that Maharaja Ranjit Singh is basically coronating Gulab Singh as the Rajai Rajgan of Jammu. And this is the official title that was given to him. He, instead of conventional wisdom of, drawing the tilak upwards, he draws the tilak downwards and gives a blessing also simultaneously. He says, this is my blessing that as I draw the tilak downwards, your family will develop deep roots into the state of Jammu and will last as a dynasty. And this is literally what happened. For 200 years, we had the Dogra's rule unchallenged. Such was the impact of the blessing of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. However, that is not the only titling that took place that day, by the way. Raja Dhyan Singh is also given the Upadhi of Raja, and Suchet Singh Ji is also given the Upadhi of Raja. They are also given their own Parganas. For instance, Suchet Singh Ji is given the Pargana of Ramnagar, which is a place today that is actually very famous for a kind of cheese, kaladi. And that has been given a GI tag very recently. And Samba is one region that is also given to Mia Dhyan Singh as the Raja. So Rajai Rajgan and two Rajas. Now just imagine, this is the kind of influence and power that the Dogras have within the Lahore Darbar, that they are able to have three Rajas besides a Maharaja that is sitting on the throne of Lahore. And the titles are given officially, and you have to use those titles in all official correspondence as well, which happens subsequently. And there's a proper, sanad that is given out on this. So the whole combined area of Jammu division today, which includes parts that are today, under illegal occupation of Pakistan. All of these were territories that were cumulatively governed then by the three brothers. Okay. So it is such a fascinating incident when you see something as, I would say, intriguing a fact as the circumstances in which the coronation happens, and why that is never, brought up. That he was already the Rajai Rajgan of Jammu before he also over the period of 20 years goes on to be the administrator of Kashmir also. So he's already a king, right? I mean, that's what often gets missed in the whole discussion. Instead, the narrative is 1846 happens, Treaty of Amritsar happens, and somebody basically buys off the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir. No, that is not the case at all. In fact, it is the story clearly, when you see the facts, has nothing to do with that trend. So this is how the coronation of Mia Gulab Singh to become the Raja of Jammu happens, and subsequently as well. I mean, he continues to participate in campaigns. He's also still continuing to be administrator, and even after the death of Ranjit Singh, Gulab Singh Ji is following the command and orders of the Lahore Darbar as and when it is issued to him, even though he's based out of Jammu, unlike the two brothers who are basically sitting out of the Lahore Darbar.
Right. Rohitji, you already mentioned about General Zorawar Singh, the military genius in Gulab Singh's army. His contributions are said to be really significant in the reign. Could you please elaborate a bit more how the rise of Zorawar Singh and his contributions, and how does it affect us even now?
Zorawar Singh's story in itself is probably worthy of a separate discussion sometimes, I feel. But I'll try to be as brief as I can on Zorawar Singh, a man who was born in a place called Hamirpur in Himachal Pradesh today, as in a Pahadi Rajput family, and basically starts off as a soldier in the army of Kangra, becomes a captive to the Ranjit Singh forces, escapes and joins the forces of Maharaja Gulab Singh, who's then Mia Gulab Singh, and rises up the ranks and gains importance. You know, it's so interesting that he was the governor of Kishtwar for Mia Gulab Singh when Kishtwar basically is awarded as a Jagir in lieu of the conquest of Kashmir Valley when it was added to the Lahore's empire, which, by the way, also had Gulab Singh playing a significant role militarily and administratively. So Kishtwar is serving as the base because of its altitude and geography for preparing soldiers for altitude warfare. This is the first of its kind that you actually hear anywhere in the world as an exercise that has been documented in the last so many hundreds of years. Now, just imagine there is a place, by the way, in Kishtwar called Chaugan. It's a beautiful, like, vale, basically, surrounded by mountains and amazing scenery, like much of Jammu and Kashmir actually is. But just imagine the strategic genius of a man like Zorawar Singh, who's preparing soldiers to, go to be ready for any kind of warfare in the future, should it come from higher altitudes. And at that time, Ladakh is a neighbor, Gilgit Baltistan is a neighbor, and you are genuinely afraid of whether these areas can continue raid. And what triggers immediately, the attack on Ladakh from Zorawar Singh is a drought that takes place in Kishtwar. And there is a serious problem of revenue. So it is basically because they wanted a stable supply of revenue. And where is that revenue going to come from? That revenue will come from the flow of Pashmina. And who controls the flow of Pashmina? From Tibet. And this is again, as I said, a strategic genius from Gulab Singh and Zorawar Singh, that they recognize the value of Pashmina and its importance, for the kind of revenue and taxation that can be generated from it. So before the great game was going on in the region, right, where Jammu Kashmir eventually ended up playing a very big role, and that is something in itself a topic of much heated discussion. Pashmina, there was a great game about Pashmina in the entire region. Tibet was a big source of Pashmina and the raw Pashmina wool that comes. And Ladakh had a monopoly on who would, be able to access Pashmina and would take like stiff royalties for it. The Britishers were talking to the Ladakhi rulers, the Galpos, on creating an alternative route that comes via, Lahore, Kinnaur, that belt, and into a place called Rampur Bushehr in Himachal Pradesh today, which was a separate kingdom in itself, an ancient kingdom in itself in the hill states. Gulab Singh preempts that by actually asking Zorawar Singh to act on this. And basically, they raid Ladakh and, defeat the Ladakhi forces and make them a, subsidiary of the state. The Ladakhi Galpo agrees to pay a tribute. Within a year, though, there is a rebellion. And that is when, instead of the route that was taken the first time, Zorawar Singh takes a second, longer route to surprise the Ladakhi forces and attack them and defeat them comprehensively so that they are not able to, and even bears the onslaught of a winter in the process. A harsh winter across the passes of Kishtwar and Ladakh to ensure that the Ladakhi rulers have to accept the supremacy of the Dogra rule. Now, here's the interesting part today, by the way. The two routes that were identified are interestingly now being made highways, national highways, to connect to Ladakh via Kishtwar. And these are alternative routes that have now been, are now being developed. So I think it's so fascinating when history starts replaying itself in modern era, and there are these things, and it's so interesting because I had shared this, map that I'd seen in a book that was talking about the military conquest of Gulab Singh on social media, and people from the military, the military veterans, the military observers, they were absolutely enamored by that map. They're like, here is a man who's identified these two routes in the past, like 200, 300 years ago. And yet we have not developed these routes to this date, which was so. I mean, this is where the importance of something about the history of Gulab Singh and Zorawar Singh plays up on itself. By the way, Gulab Singh also manages to, add Gilgit Baltistan in the same era, though it basically rebels and becomes free because Zorawar Singh passes away, and a lot of the key army generals of Dogra forces, including Colonel Mehtab Ram, passes away subsequent to the Tibet invasion. But the audacity to invade Tibet in itself is so fascinating. Making Ladakh as a base and bringing in Balti soldiers and Ladakhi soldiers who have, and non-soldiers who have altitude advantage with them. He's going even higher in altitude, attacking the Tibetan forces, even defeating them, and securing the area of Kailash Mansarovar. And the first thing he does when he reaches Kailash Mansarovar is actually take a dip in the holy lake of Kailash Mansarovar and do puja and archana there. So that is the kind of daring and bravery that somebody like Zorawar Singh undertook. In fact, when Zorawar Singh died, it is recorded in history, even by Francis' young husband, who goes to Tibet in 1909, which is like, I think, 150 or 70 years later, that the Tibetans actually did not even dare to come close to the body of Zorawar Singh. They were so scared of him even then. They thought he was not a man, he was a monster, he was a demon. Later, of course, when they realized that he passed away, they actually built a chotin or a stupa basically to commemorate him, and that stupa is still there in Tibet at that same site. So this is when you have the imprint of people, the brave people who dare to dream, who dare to undertake ambition of that scale and nature. You realize that these are special people all of a sudden, and they're no ordinary people. And that is why somebody like Zorawar Singh, under the leadership of Mia Gulab Singh, of Maharaja Gulab Singh, is another person who's so fascinating. By the way, an interesting anecdote about Zorawar Singh ji, who later also got the surname of Kaluria, because he became the Dharam Bhai of the Kalhuri Rani of Maharaja Gulab Singh. So Kalhur is a place called Bilaspur today in Himachal Pradesh. So the hill states also have a history that is, sort of common to them in that sense, the Himalayan hill states. So Zorawar Singh ji actually never bought clothes, it seems. He would only take clothes that were passed down by Maharaja Gulab Singh. So he always wore second hand. So there was a bit of a quirk about him all the time. But that quirk was probably, also a mark of a kind of eccentricity, perhaps a kind of the word I use in Hindi Urdu that is called junoon, that you need to, undertake a campaign as audacious as the Tibet expedition that was taken up by the Dogra forces and in conjunction with the Ladakhi and Balti forces at the time.
That was an astonishing facts to know actually about Zorawar Singh and how much he did is actually means to us even now. So it seems that there's always been something extraordinary about the army raised by Gulab Singh. What next comes to the mind is about the Jammu and Kashmir Rifles, the notable regiment which was absorbed by the Indian Army as a separate entity, and how they fought both the world wars, not under the British officers, but under their own forces. Could you please tell us a little bit more about the Jammu Kashmir Rifles as we know it now?
So this force that I was talking about, to answer your previous question, that was assembled essentially by Gulab Singh, is the foundation of Zorawar Singh, rather, was the foundation of the Dogra regiment of the JNK Light Infantry at that time that came up. So, okay. So here's the JNK Light Infantry even today exists in an interesting format. World Wars, they were distinguished along with the Jodhpur Lancers and the, if I'm not mistaken, the Mysore Lancers as forces that probably had some of the most gallant brave hearts and martyrs who secured the boundaries and frontiers for the allied powers on both occasions. And interestingly, just like the Jodhpur Lancers, this was also a force that was literally led by the Crown Prince himself, Maharaja Hari Singh, especially in World War II, who was the man who was leading the force at that time and was the commander in charge. And not just in the two world wars, but even in 1947 October. So there's so much, myth myth making that takes place about the way in which the raids of the Kabylis happen across Jammu and Kashmir. Brigadier Rajinder Singh, we tend to forget his contribution in staving off, the raiders and securing the Srinagar airport and preventing it from, falling for 3 days till the Indian armed forces arises, or the manner in which the J&K light infantry staved off the Kabaili raiders in Baramulla for 3 days. This whole guide story that has been, myth that has been perpetrated for decades on stretch now of misleading and, that happening. It was actually for 3 whole days and nights that the J&K light infantry was fighting off despite its limited resources, in Baramulla, and ensuring that they were not able to move forward for 3 days despite being a force of limited numbers. So that tells you the kind of bravery they've had even in 40s, operation, the official history of 1947-48 of the operations in Jammu and Kashmir, that is published by the Ministry of Defense. It is available for anyone to read even online for free. You tend to read the kind of dangers that were undertaken at significant heights, for instance, in the Ladakh region, the Kargil Dras region, in securing the frontier to the state that it was before a ceasefire was declared. And that is where the sad part also arises. Had the ceasefire not been declared, the map might have been very different today. The boundaries might have been very different today. But these were lines and frontiers that were held on. When the Gilgit siege happened when the Gilgit siege happened, sorry, the Skaddu siege happened in 1947. For 6 months, Brigadier Sher Singh Thapa holds on to onto the fort of of Skaddu with nothing to fight for, with basically nothing to even eat at one stage, and that is when he surrenders, and the entire bunch of like the 200 or 300 people who were fighting along with him, with the Brigadier Sher Singh Thapa, basically are slaughtered despite being given assurance of safe passage. But holding on to a fort against all kinds of adverse circumstances, being surrounded from all sides by the rebel forces, and still holding up in the fort, that tells you the kind of bravery that these people have demonstrated repeatedly and should be commended for and should not be forgotten to this day.
Right, Rohitji, that's quite a revelation. Rohitji, how would you respond to the Sikh historian Cunningham's allegation that Gulab Singh was the chief cause of ruin of the Sikh state after Ranjit Singh's death? So something around those, what was happening at that point of time? How could you elaborate? Could you elaborate on that, please?
Definitely. It's a very good question that you've asked. And because of one person's narrative, basically, a whole set of academics, supposed academics, have been weaving this history that here was a man who was basically, or a set of brothers who were basically treacherous, who were always conspiring against the Lahore Darbar's interests. And sadly, even in some Hindi serials in India on Ranjit Singh, this was the kind of story that was portrayed, the villainous Dogra brothers. However, when you start reading into the contemporaries of Alexander Cunningham of the time, people like George Carmichael Smith, who was not charitable either to the Dogra brothers, or, Alexander Gardner, a man who did much to modernize the forces of Lahore along with other mercenaries of the time, or even Alberto Edwardes, another man who was probably not very charitable to the Dogras. You realize three fundamental things. One, that post Ranjit Singh, the succession line of the empire was a very weak succession line and was full of infighting within itself. Now, here's what, somebody like Edwardes had to, Edwardes, or sorry, the physician rather, I mean to say, of Ranjit Singh had to say about, the English physician in, I forget his name right now. in the Lahore Darbar had to say about Prince Khadak Singh, who had ascended the throne. And I'm just I'm not quoting him exactly, but I need to paraphrase him, that here was a man who would remain knocked out for the most of the time because he was such a heavy opium addict. Okay. And who had no control on his senses on what was going on. So to claim that he was being guided or misguided by the Dogra brothers is a very far-fetched analogy. Rather, if that is the case, even the Dogras themselves were sort of, Gulab Singh, of course, is shown as somebody who had an inclination towards, consuming small amounts of opium regularly. But having said that, the point remains that, when you see that, and Khadak Singh himself, being guided by his own tutor, Chet Singh Bajwa. And, this is where the circumstances start to diverge on history. While Cunningham says that there was a conspiracy to kill Chet Singh Bajwa, when you read the Gulabnama, you get to know that Chet Singh Bajwa was conspiring while misguiding Khadak Singh to kill off important figures in the Lahore Darbar, which not only included the Dogra brothers, but also people like Sardar Lehna Singh Majithia ji, who was and Imamuddin, who were key figures of the Lahore Darbar under Ranjit Singh. And the murder or the assassination or the elimination, rather, the word that should be used, of Chet Singh Bajwa takes place after taking the son of Khadak Singh, Kunwar Naunihal Singh, into full confidence, by the way. And it is Kunwar Naunihal Singh who directs the Dogras to eliminate this man. So that tells you that it was not just about the infighting of the Lahore family was not a product of some intrigue. Rather, it was something that was already taking place. In fact, when the funeral of Khadak Singh happened, it is said that Naunihal Singh had not even bothered to go and visit the funeral, by the way. He was rather having fun with his friend and the son of Gulab Singh, Mia Udan Singh, in the Lahore fort when the unfortunate accident takes place. But point being that this is where, also a lot of misinformation has been spread over the years, and this has been carried over by nefarious elements within India to promote enmity between communities as well. This is the level of poison that has been spread on misinformation and wrong reading of history. Now, when it comes to the circumstances in which Kunwar Naunihal Singh ji dies, now, first things first, it was an accident. And what is the proof of that? The proof of that is that Gulab Singh's son also dies in the same accident. If it was really a planned, assassination or an accident, why would Mia Gulab Singh's or Maharaja Gulab Singh's son be there in the first place? Wouldn't the brothers have conspired to, keep their own clan safe? That tells you something, right? I mean, but the kind of narrative that has been spun over the years that, oh, he was killed, and even fictitious arguments have been attributed to to Cunningham and Gardner, by the way, over the years. That apparently Gardner said that he looked perfectly fine and just unconscious, and later he was basically smashed to death, and which there's no reference in the text that were written or attributed to these authors, these contemporaries of the time. So clearly it was an accident. Now, mind you, while there is infighting going on in the Darbar, the brothers are not on the same page. Dhyan Singh is siding with Maharaja Sher Singh, the man who eventually goes on after Khadak Singh's death to be the Maharaja, and post the death of Kunwar Naunihal Singh. And Sher Singh, at that time there was this idea that there would be a confederacy formed with Sher Singh, Maharani Chand Kaur, and Kunwar Naunihal Singh. But when the circumstances change, and coincidentally, Dhyan Singh goes to Jammu while he assures Sher Singh that his rights would be secured. Sher Singh is also, by the way, another son of Maharaja Ranjit Singh from another wife of his. Sher Singh overplays his hand and decides to attack the Lahore fort and surrounds it from all sides. But for 3 straight days, Maharaja Gulab Singh defends the fort against Sher Singh's outnumbered army. Basically, he has just 2,000 or 3,000 men, Gulab Singh that is. And while Sher Singh has brought with him about 15-20,000 men, and despite that they're able to hold off that siege for 3 days, because Maharani Chand Kaur has asked for Gulab Singh to help and not let Sher Singh accede the throne. Incidentally, when Dhyan Singh comes back, Dhyan Singh sees this, he is furious with Maharaja Sher Singh. He says that, why did he do this? And when the peace pipe is being smoked between the various factions, Gulab Singh does not agree to stop firing from inside the Lahore fort till Dhyan Singh sends his word. He knows that Dhyan Singh is in the opposite camp, but he wants the assurance from Dhyan Singh because he knows that Sher Singh is not being guided in the right manner necessarily, and he has been misled by other chieftains like the Sindanwala Sardars. So you see that despite the claim of no loyalty, you are seeing the various factions, the brothers of the three brothers basically being loyal to different factions themselves. So it is part of the larger confusion generally right now. It's not, and that definitely shows that this has nothing planned about it. In fact, Maharani Chand Kaur is forever grateful to Maharaja Gulab Singh for securing her interest, including a jagir that produces substantial revenue, and even securing ornaments of Maharani Chand Kaur in the subsequent peace that is sued between the two sides. That tells you something. And even later, when there is a rebellion happening after Sher Singh's death, Suchet Singh and Hira Singh are on opposite sides. Dhyan Singh, by the way, gets murdered by Sindhanwala Sardars. Suchet Singh and Hira Singh die in fratricide because they are on opposite sides following Sher Singh's death. And it's only Gulab Singh that survives because he's coincidentally not in Lahore. He's always in Jammu at that time. So how can you control? If there was some remote control technique back in the day from Jammu that we are not aware of, definitely it was there, but the facts don't seem to support that for now.
Thank you, Rohit ji. That was a major myth busted. So while through and through, Maharaja Gulab Singh remained loyal to the Sikh Empire even after the death of Ranjit Singh ji. So it's sad that Cunningham's narrative prevailed, but this actually is going to clarify a lot of doubts about what happened after and during that time. So moving on to our next question, can we now delve into the Anglo-Sikh War and its aftermath, specifically focusing on Gulab Singh's role in the Treaty of Lahore and then the Treaty of Amritsar. His participation has always been controversial regarding his loyalty to the Sikh Empire. Again, I mean, I know you've answered that, but in context with these two treaties.
Again, an amazing question, a question that is definitely very controversial for a lot of people. While some academics have tried to show that, Maharaja Gulab Singh was definitely a villain, even they've had to concede that probably he was no bigger a villain than many of the other people who had played a big role in the debacle that took place in the two Anglo-Sikh wars. One major character in all of this, by the way, is the Maharani Jindan Kaur, or Maharani Jinda as she is called popularly even today, in creating the chaos and sowing the seeds for the two Anglo-Sikh wars on both occasions. In 1846, there was no need to breach the treaties that had been signed with respect to the boundaries that Maharaja Ranjit Singh had signed. But because there was a monetary problem inside the Lahore Darbar, one, and two, the Khalsa army had become more powerful than the royal family. Maharani Jindan Kaur tries to play off by inciting the Khalsa army to raid British-controlled territories. When this happens, in fact, Mia Gulab Singh is in Peshawar because he, under the treaties that had been signed by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, was basically ordered to help the British forces fight in the Northwest Frontier province in the Afghanistan campaign that the British are undertaking. Okay. Now let's look at how it's playing out. He is in Peshawar. He is not being called to support, by the way, by the Lahore Darbar till the very end. In fact, Maharaja Gulab Singh, who had even in fact come earlier prior to the Sikh war to Lahore on the insistence of the Khalsa army to pay, arrears and revenues, and he does promise to do that. He asks who on earth decides, and this is actually a written communication that is there. Who gave the order to breach the treaty that was signed with the British? Maharaja Gulab Singh knew that the minute that would happen, the British would overwhelm the Lahore forces, and that is exactly what happened eventually. And Gulab Singh ji would not be able to come in time with the kind of resources, with the kind of money power that would help, achieve that, breakthrough. Now, you have to realize two things. Around that time, his forces are also diverted towards Ladakh, Baltistan, and Tibet simultaneously. And he has lost many of his top commanders at that time. He is not able to take, mobilize forces in the same way. So, to have this foolhardy notion that he would be able to support you militarily was, and that too at the last stage when you're already close to defeat, and so as to turn the tide was wishful thinking from the very beginning. Despite that, he being made wazir in the nick of time to negotiate with the Britishers post the defeat, he manages to secure some of the best terms of the treaty under the circumstances that are there. The circumstances of the Treaty of Lahore, which was signed before the Treaty of Amritsar, by the way, which people have forgotten. Now, the Treaty of Lahore not only made the Lahore Darbar forego territories ranging from Kashmir to Northwest Frontier Province, areas like Islamabad, by the way, that were part of the empire. They also penalized them with 1 lakh rupees. 1 crore rupees, sorry, 1 crore Nanak Shahi rupees. My bad. 1 crore Nanak Shahi rupees. Lahore Darbar is bankrupt. It cannot even pay for it. They have no resources. On top of that, under a subsequent corollary treaty of the Bhairawal, Treaty of Bhairawal as it is called, they're again penalized 50 lakh rupees, by the way, because they have again done, tried to be, nasty towards the British forces, which was not needed. So, it is Gulab Singh who comes to the rescue by offering to pay off a substantial amount on behalf of the Lahore Darbar. And by the way, Gulab Singh was to be rewarded under the Treaty of Lahore for his services of wakalat, as it was called in Farsi in those times, with appropriate awards from the British side, subject to whatever is the consensus that comes up. There were areas that would have been part of Jammu and Kashmir. For instance, Rawalpindi and Islamabad, by the way, that whole belt would have been part of Jammu and Kashmir, and that had been offered to Gulab Singh as part of the wakalat fee. Places like parts of Himachal that adjoin Punjab and northern Punjab were also part of that treaty. But at the last minute, the British East India Company decides to do otherwise and renegotiates the treaty in the form of the Treaty of Amritsar, because they want bases to prevent the hill states from being able to harass. They are already starting to sense the capabilities of many hill states, including Jammu, in terms of being able to harass the territories in Punjab under the British rule, under British influence. So they want to secure that. So treaty is renegotiated. Kashmir and Chamba, parts of Chamba are basically offered, and 75 lakh rupees. Mind you, this is Nanak Shahi rupees, by the way, the currency that was in vogue in the Lahore Darbar that time, as the indemnity that will be paid on behalf of the Lahore Darbar. And that is what has actually happened. So it was not a sale. It was basically fee given in lieu of the financial help given by Gulab Singh to the Lahore Darbar for paying off the penalty, which was reduced from 1 lakh to 1 crore to 75 lakhs. and the wakalat that he undertakes, because of which we see that happen. So the myth has, the myth has been around, and sadly nobody bothers to read the two treaties also carefully. The subsequent clauses that highlight who is to pay what and what is to happen, it tells you a lot. Gulab Singh was certainly not in the condition to be able to help, but he still gets to the best terms in the first treaty. That in itself should, probably have set the narrative to rest. But sadly, that is not the case. And many popular myths also, to the extent of, extremists of certain communities calling the whole Dogra community as traitors or gaddars in their popular songs and movies as well, continues to this day.
Not a very good fact to live with, that somebody who should have been called as a hero after how he participated in these treaties, again, because of the narratives, the whole image is tarnished. However, let's move on to the next question, which actually after how would you describe Maharaja Gulab Singh Ji as the ruler of Jammu and Kashmir, the reforms he introduced, and what all happened under his reign?
Maharaja Gulab Singh Ji, as I said earlier, was definitely a man who had an administrative ability despite being illiterate. Here's the fascinating part. We hear a lot about Akbar being illiterate but yet being a great governor, but we never heard the same about Maharaja Gulab Singh. Maharaja Gulab Singh understood the value of law and order, in restoring confidence amongst people in to conduct their economic activities. Now, think about it this way. Besides Mia Dido being, neutralized, he also cracks down heavily on law and order, the lumpen elements. There are stories that you record from British travelers, including Gardner, Smith, Edwardes, that Maharaja Gulab Singh had no qualms in punishing criminals, even petty criminals, quite stiffly, be it publicly hanging them on occasions if need be, or basically giving them the scare of their lives by basically shaving a top of the head, just the skin of the top of the head. These sound very cruel today, but these were pretty much the norms of the times that we tend to forget. We tend to say that if Gulab Singh was cruel, then the Britishers and the East India Company, who blew many sepoys, mutinous sepoys, by tying them to cannons, to smithereens, were just as cruel, and hung them from the British East India Company, who hung many rebel soldiers from trees and let the bodies rot on the trees for days, were equally cruel. So why do we have these double standards in that case is something I don't get. However, having said that, the fear of Gulab Singh and his administration became so much, and there is an interesting anecdote in history, that there was this trader who was traveling through Jammu, and who gets robbed, and his wares end up in Jammu Bazaar eventually. He actually was going to be killed, but he started shouting, "Hi Sarkar, hi Sarkar." And basically the thieves get scared and they let him go, at least alive, at that time. And later, when the news reaches Gulab Singh, he calls that trader and asks him, "What happened to your goods and wares?" And he says they got stolen. A raid is undertaken on Jammu Bazaar to identify the goods and wares that the trader was carrying, and these are restored back to the trader, by the way, without any additional charge, without any additional cost to him. And in fact, there is also some monetary compensation given to the trader. And the thieves, by the way, surrender when they hear of this raid in the Jammu Bazaar, out of fear that they will be mauled if they do not surrender in time and seek protection of Maharaja Gulab Singh. So this is the kind of fear that Gulab Singh had how do I say, in basically instilled in the minds of the lumpen and unlawful elements. Now, when it came to the economic part and the humanitarian part, 1846 and 1847 are years that are very difficult for the Kashmir Valley. And this is where I want to get into a very important point. There was a major drought. There were a continued years of drought that had taken place in Kashmir Valley at that time, and people were dying because of hunger. Despite having serious financial issues, Maharaja Gulab Singh undertakes a very huge exercise in scale to take rice and from the hills from the plains of Jammu and take it all the way up to the Kashmir Valley to ensure that people are not dying of famine and hunger. What was the point of doing it if he was a cruel person who had colonized Kashmir? That is certainly not the case. There was a major strike of the Pashmina shawl buffs in Kashmir Valley upon the accession or upon the control of Kashmir Valley shifting towards Maharaja Gulab Singh and the Dogras. Now, what was the condition? What are the conditions under which the shawl buffs or the shawl weavers used to work? We have to understand that there were no fixed salaries. There were no minimum wages, by the way, in those days. Second, you could not change your workshop, even if you were being treated like slaves. You had no freedom to move around. Third, there was a serious shortage of raw material all the time, because of which it would become very expensive and shawl makers would literally fall into penury just to afford stuff like pashmina, for instance. That's where the Ladakh campaign also, subsequently gained so much significance if you think about it. The securing of the pashmina supply routes. And they go on strike. And Maharaja Gulab Singh actually is in Kashmir at that time, and he decides to meet the shawl buffs, understand their problems. And based on what he understands, he brings in radical reforms of those times. And not heard of probably in most parts of the world. And you don't hear about it even today. He institutes a minimum wage, first of all, for the shawl buff. Okay, that is unheard of probably in Indian history anywhere, especially in that era. He gives the shawl buffs freedom to change the workshop or the karkhana they are associated with. That is a revolutionary reform. And third, he ensures that there is a minimum price fixed for the raw material, and you cannot do black marketing and hoarding of the raw material. These are the kind of reforms that revolutionize the shawl making industry of excuse me, of Kashmir Valley. Fourth, he actually internationalizes Pashmina shawls of Kashmir Valley, Jammu Kashmir State, in a fashion that you cannot even imagine. He sends trade delegations in the exhibitions and fairs of Europe of that time, and the popularity of the shawls made in the state becomes so high that it becomes a major revenue source for the state, and the export volumes apparently doubled within Gulab Singh's era. That tells you the kind of the kind of thinking the man had, and the value associated. Subsequently, by the way, him and his son Ranbir Singh also try to reform agriculture in a big way by introducing things like cash crops, for instance, or trying to bring in silkworms. Silk farming was a very big tradition in Kashmir in the historical times, but people had forgotten that. They reintroduced the silk farms, and subsequently Ranbir Singh also sets up the Resham Karkhana of Srinagar that still survives, by the way, that basically got commissioned under Maharaja Pratap Singh, and is still a major economic center, though it's in very pitiable condition today. But I mean, if you've been there, since you are somebody who has roots in the Kashmir Valley, you would recognize the value that the Resham Karkhana even today has in the minds of the people. So these are the kind of economic changes that were. The Dogras, by the way, were the people who ensured that India's second hydroelectric project came up. By the way, they were the second princely state to bring electricity in as early as 1900s. The only other state that had done that before them was Mysore. That tells you the kind of progressive thinking that was guiding the Dogra rulers of that time.
That speaks a volume about his legacy, Gulab Singh's legacy in the region of Jammu and Kashmir. Rohitji, coming down to the one last question, I just wanted to know, we have understood Maharaja Gulab Singh as an exceptional warrior, a great leader, a strategist. However, why is it that there's very little awareness? Forget awareness. We have a wrong narrative around Gulab Singh ji and the Dogra dynasty after years, and we've not been able to correct it.
At the time of independence, and this is my own view, I would say that many people may agree or not agree with it. There was the need felt to set a national narrative. However, the national narrative that was set up via our history textbooks, via our popular culture, were narratives that unfortunately decided to downplay the achievements of many Indians and upplay certain kinds of popular myths. There was an attempt, as I say, of showing India as a pacifist state, and probably these achievements of people like Maharaja Gulab Singh, or even in the south, for instance, somebody like Tirunal Martanda Varma, who had defeated the Dutch comprehensively in Kolachal. Those were downplayed because all of a sudden we are told that we were not a nation of conquerors and warriors. We were rather a nation that was looking at the path of peace and renunciation, which, while it has merit to it in some way, was never the true or complete picture of India. And that is where we probably lost out, is what I feel. You know, these are things that Indians, not just people in Jammu, I would say, or Jammu and Kashmir, but these are the kind of historical figures that Indians should be proud of as a whole. The modern Indian state was enabled because there were such people in the 19th century who dared to create empires of their own, who dared to dream and demonstrate bravery of the kind that you would have never imagined. Some of the force, 19th century, the Dogra forces were probably the most modernized and advanced forces of their times in India, because they were literally fighting with European tactics and techniques of the contemporary era. Alexander Gardner, who was brought in as a mercenary commander and a man who actually helps the Sikh Empire learns about modern muskets and guns, was introduced to Maharaja Ranjit Singh by the Dogra brothers in the first place. Most people don't know this today. So here were these people, this bunch of people who had ambition, who dared to dream. And there are many other figures, mind you, of the same time that I also, talk about. Somebody like a Lachit Borphukan in Assam, we don't know much about him in popular culture. Even you go much back, somebody like a Lalitaditya Muktapida of the Karakota dynasty of Kashmir, whose empire was probably some of the biggest that you could even think of. We don't know anything about him in our history textbooks because there was an agenda that was said that we do not have to highlight our own victors and successors and the people who you know made India the way it was. Rather, we have been hiding, and sort of creating a defeatist narrative, I'm sorry to use this term, about our own people and about our own history, and not showing that we have, and while we definitely have wounds as a civilization, the wounds will not heal if we do not talk about our successes. And that is unfortunately not been the case. And that is where I feel the importance of including such figures, if in our history discussions, our narratives, our textbooks. There is this very feeble demand in amongst the Jammu people today that we should be taught Dogra history more comprehensively. Sadly, it's not being heeded in the way it should be because there are not enough people, the kind of lobby groups or the pressure groups we need to kind of bring those kind of changes. But the fact remains that today's kid in Jammu does not know anything about this history, is unaware. One incident that I feel very sad, there is a place called Ghoda Chowk in Jammu. It's called Ghoda Chowk because there is a statue of a man sitting on a ghoda. Who is that man? The kid of Jammu will not be able to answer you. And that is where we have lost the battle, unfortunately. And if we want to turn around this battle and win the larger war, we have to, at least in our own individual capacities, and that is what I feel I've been trying for the last few years, talk about our history, the forgotten history, the ignored history, and revive that sense of pride, at least amongst our people, that we were not a defeatist nation. We were a nation of victors. We were a nation of champions. We were a nation of people who dared to invade from the south, Java and Indonesia, and make it part of the larger Indian empire. We were the people who dared to have expeditions in Southeast Asia and influence the culture in the way that nobody would have imagined, and make it Ramayana Kshetra literally even today. So then you see those, when only when these things will become popular, and I'm glad that it has started happening in the last, decade, will we actually be proud of our civilization, because we will be having good reason enough and enough facts to back that claim. When the ordinary person is able to respect people like Rajendra Chola, or a Gulab Singh, or a Martand Varma, or a Maharana Pratap, for instance, or even a Lachit Borphukan, that is when I would say that we have succeeded in telling the true history of our people. I strongly feel, and some great eminent politician of India had said this a few years back, the textbook game will go on forever. We have to start telling our own stories all over again, though. And I'm glad that the Jammu Kashmir Study Circle is doing this. It's trying to tell our own stories all over again to our people, and I'm hopeful, and I'm very optimistic that this will become a big thing going ahead.
Thank you, Rohit. Completely agree with you on that. We have to start telling our own stories, the story of our history, which is full of success to our future generations. Rohit ji, on behalf of Jammu and Kashmir, I want to extend our sincere thanks for your engaging and informative talk on the topic today. Your insights and depth of the knowledge have provided us with very new perspective and valuable takeaways. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you, Manjuji. Thank you to the Jammu Kashmir Study Circle for giving this opportunity. Thank you so much.